Thank you very much. So Paolo invited me to give a talk, and I said, oh, wonderful, I have wonderful new things that I want to tell about, I have new ideas. And he said, no, 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 just leave that for something else. We really want from you an history of eDemocracy. And I said, but what about my new ideas? Well, the last 3 minutes you might be able to speak about them. And I don't think I will have the time for that. So eDemocracy is really a thread that came through the interweaving of several other threads. And to understand it, we really need to go back and look at the various threads that came together. And each technique that is used inside eDemocracy actually had something equivalent before the birth of the internet, and it just got transformed. But somehow they didn't get transformed and kept their relative importance. So, for example, there used to be petitions for the government. I mean, there used to be petitions respect to kings. You would petition the king. And that got moved to democracy. There were still the petition about with democracy, but they weren't really very important because you need to gather signatures, and that takes a long time. On the other side, in a normal democratic process, you do have polls, and polls are really important. And with polls, you have a representative sample which is gathered, and you have an agency that just do this, and they're, as I said, really important. Now, with the birth of the internet, we had e-petitions, and now on the internet it's really easy to gather signatures. So while petitions were not really important, e-petitions started to be important, and they started, at the beginning they were done from third parties like change.org, and then eventually institutions started to pick them up and put them inside. We had Germany, we had England, the US, and now with the Treaty of Lisbon there is the basic legal mechanism to have some European petition system. On the other side, polls also changed, and I think you can vaguely see it, and that's about how important they are right now. Mostly because it's very difficult to have on the internet a representative sample. And for this reason, all the polls that are made on the internet will always have written above, this is actually just for information purpose, it's not really, you shouldn't do science on this, and so on. But what's the main difference between petitions and polls? In polls, the person who is deciding the poll decides all the actions, all the possibilities. Whereas in petitions, people could actually write their own possibilities. And so the necessity came there to integrate those two together and permit to people to write possibilities in a poll. And so we had open polls. Now, open polls by themselves went through various stages. At the beginning, people could just suggest something, and they could see what other people have suggested, and then they could vote what other people have suggested. But still, we were not in a place which was good enough, because proposals that were presented later would have had an handicap respect to the one that were presented before. So now a new kind of polls started to emerge that are polls where they are voted, but they are voted in a fair way. And there is a problem over here, and we'll show it with this note. Every time you see that note, it actually means that we will be facing this problem. And we are going to face this problem in several other situations. In comments, for example. Comments started with letters to the editor, but then, and in the meantime, we had commenting a website, a page, a blog post, an article, a paragraph, and now we are at commenting a selection, where, in Google Doc, you actually select something and you put a comment. And I expect in the future that it will reverse. You could actually, write a comment and decide several selections so that you can say, this part is repeated over here, and so on. But while this was going on, there were situations where a lot of people were commenting, and it was very difficult to decide which one were important. So websites started to permit to people to vote on comments. And then they started to gain information about the people who were writing comments, so /dot, and that's essentially the karma system. And then some new websites are starting to use this as a capital. So, you want to use this karma to do an action, and you lose a part of this karma. Why this is important? Because if you do not do this, people who have more karma eventually end up becoming some sort of elite who have more power on the website, and you don't want that to happen. Now, again, we have the same problem. And what is the problem? The problem is that it's not fair. If you can vote comments, and people can vote comments because it gives them a visibility, it gives to the comment visibility, but then you can vote the comments that are more visible. The result of this is that there is a process of to who has shall be given, where those comments start to get more and more votes, and eventually a new comment has a really hard time to enter in the contest. And the same thing is happening for options, ideas in poll, and so on. So this is a central problem in eDemocracy, and it has been solved. So there are several possibilities to solve it. For example, so dividing the page of the results from the page where people vote is a very good way, and people writing polls have been doing this all the time. Another one is showing two proposals at random and asking to choose them, or showing a proposal at random and asking to rate it, or showing the least seen proposal, not the most voted, not the one with the highest vote, but not also the one that has been discarded more, the one that has not been evaluated enough, the new one, or the one that were there from a long time, but for some reason they weren't being seen long enough. And another important element is not letting people link to a proposal. If I write something and I send a link to all my friends, it becomes a popularity contest. People are not actually voting on the content anymore. So this is all our ideas, and I am not actually affiliated, although I really like their website. And this is, according to me, the first website which is seriously doing open polls, and it's a collaboration between Princeton University, Google, and the World Bank. And so when I discovered the website, I tested it out, and I tested it out running an experiment, and I asked, what would you like to be, who would you like to be the next president of the Republic, of the Italian Republic, il prossimo Presidente della Repubblica? And so I wrote 10 names that I got from Repubblica or from Il Corriere, I don't remember. And how does this work? You go there and you are essentially shown two names, and you have to choose among those two names which one would you rather, which one do you like more. But you can also say, if you cannot actually choose something, or you can say, well, I actually have got another idea. I have another name that I think we should vote. And after you voted for one of those two, other two are shown to you, and then other two. And eventually we started gathering names. And at the end, this is how the result looked like. Those were all the names that were collected. And you cannot actually read anything from there. I might be able to read some of them over here. So the first one were Imposimato, Strada, Rodotà, Gabanelli, Dario Fo, and the last ones were Roberto Maroni, Pier Ferdinando Casini, Schifani, and last one, Silvio Berlusconi. So next to each name, oh, by the way, this is our incumbent president. So we've seen how when he was elected, there were anger and not nice feelings. Maybe that has something to do about where it actually is respect to all those other people. But what does this system tells us? Well, this is, for example, what it tells us. It applies to each name a number. This number is not the number of votes. This number is the probability that taking that name and another name on the list at random, this name will actually come out as winning. And so we did this, as we said, Judging Posimato came out first, and he wrote this. I thought that was very nice. He thanked, he referred to University of Princeton and so on, and I also thank University of Princeton. I think it's a really good tool. So if any of you wants to make an open poll, please, I think you can use this tool. Now let's go back to our threads. And something happened in 2001, and there was nothing less than an earthquake, and the earthquake was called Wikipedia. And when Wikipedia came, a lot of people started thinking in different ways and said, but if we can write an encyclopedia together, what else can we actually do together? And so a number of people and publications started to call for wiki governments and wiki legislation and so on, and showing that actually it was not necessary to have a hierarchical organization to organize yourself or to take decision. Now, if we are looking at, by the way, among those there is a book that we wrote together with a colleague of mine. I challenge you to find out which one it is. Now, after this, if we are speaking about wiki government, we need to divide between wiki governance and wiki democracy. That is, are we going to ask people to do things together, or are we going together with the people? In fact, are the people going to write the laws together? Those are two different kind of systems. We are going here to work mostly on the wiki democracy, although some of the platforms that we are seeing are also good for wiki governance. And at some point, there started to be a vision. People started to have nearly a mystic experience. I mean, people would arrive in a discussion board or a discussion group and start to tell you about how a system for democracy should be in the future. And it was incredible how similar the vision from those people was. You know, they wanted a system that was infinitely scalable. It could work for a small group of people as well for interplanetary legislation. It could work, you could have anyone participating. It would have been self-moderated. It would have been fair, transparent, open source, respect privacy, vote anonymity, usable, and not take too much time, and make also coffee, I suppose. Now, it doesn't take a long time to realize that some of those principles are actually in contradiction one with the other. This slide is on Twitter. I've tweeted it some time ago. And we wanted this system to be applied to legislation, so people to be able to propose legislation, comment, modify legislation, vote on legislation, and vote on the modification. And then we wanted the result of this to be a map of what people actually want, a measured map with the best ideas explained. Now, Beppe Grillo at some point came and said, we decided together on the internet. This is a platform that would do this according to the dream. And in fact, what was happening in the meantime? In the meantime, a number of parties called generically Trojan horse parties started to appear. Those were parties that said, we are going to put a representative on the parliament, and that representative is going to do what you tell them to do. And so the first one to do it was demox.net in Sweden, and they just used some very basic software. They used the first net conference where they would present the issue, they would write what the options were, and people would just vote yes or no. And then they moved to Drupal. And then we had, then historically, Beppe Grillo came out with this speech of we decide things together. And just after that, we had liquid feedback being written. And then the Pirate Party got elected, and then the Best Party in Iceland. And the Best Party started a platform immediately after getting elected, which used open active democracy. And then the last one was the Movimento 5 Stelle, who got nearly 1/3 of the electorate. So, if you look at all those parties, they tend to have something in common. They won, and they won big, and then they started to go down. This is Gartner hype cycle. So this is how a new technology enters in society. And when a new technology enters in society, it's nearly inevitable that it creates a bubble of expectations. And for example, this is according to Wikipedia, where are many new technologies right now on this cycle. So going back to here, this is pretty much where we had that declaration. This is where the Movimento 5 Stelle actually won. And this is where we are right now, where the Movimento 5 Stelle lost points. It's not so much about what has been done, it's about what has not been done. But it's not so much because there was a lack of political power, it was a lot because, the technology was just not ready. And if you go around right now, you will find that there is a big division between people who want to delegate and people who do not want to delegate. And they organize themselves around the Pirate Party on one side and around E2D on the other side. And there are several parties around. Some of them got people elected, some of them did not. So let's go back. This was our vision. And how does our practice connect to our vision? Well, let's focus on just some elements over here. Let's forget about infinitely scalable. We just want a system which is small, for a small group, where anyone in this group can participate. It will be self-moderated and fair. Then people can propose legislation, modify, vote on the legislation, and vote on the modification. If we have something like this, we essentially have a basic engine of a decision-making system, a basic engine that then we can put inside a lot of other systems. We can, for example, put it, you can have a company and you can have, a small group of people that decide inside that company. Yes, it's not going to be completely open, but at least the people over there are working in any democracy. And then maybe we can expand it. Let's start with something small and then move it on. So the first problem is we write proposal, people start to vote on the proposal, and then people write new proposals. Now, well, how are we going to evaluate this? Well, we've already seen this. This is the problem from before. But a different problem is if people write proposal and vote, and then people change those proposals. Now, can you actually inherit some of the votes that were given to the first proposal to the inherited ones? Now, this is an open question, and this is not a question that does have a single answer. In fact, it has several answers. And each system, each platform used a different answer. So a basic one was from Mixed Ink. This was used from the Obama administration, and which was just no inheritance at all. Essentially, it's like a petition system. Anyone can start again and copy material, but all the votes have to start from the beginning. Yes, it's not fair that people have less time to vote on a particular proposal, but, doesn't matter. At this point, it's good. Done is better than perfect. That's what we learned before. Well, what about using a poll? When you have two proposals, you can ask that one eats the other one. Then you ask among the people who voted for the second one if they are happy to be eaten by the first one. And if 70% says yes, then you move, 70% of the people that vote in 2 days, in 48 hours says yes, then you move everybody else to the other one. Another idea is from Wilfredo Goes to Athens, which is using a genetic algorithm, a moment where people present proposal and then a moment where people vote, a moment where people present and a moment where people vote, with no inheritance, but everybody starting again at each generation. Another one is the one that is used from liquid feedback. The only person who wrote a proposal is allowed to change it. But people can petition that person writing, asking. And this is like the model of benevolent dictator that we find so much around, and is essentially a feudal system. As Clay Shirky very well says, Iresis is also using a similar system right now. And then I mentioned Clay Shirky. Clay Shirky really spoke about the difference between those two in a wonderful TED talk that I invite you to search and to see. The other one is anybody can can make copies, but then the system will present all those copies in a sort of tree-like, where it's easy to people to just pick and choose which branches of the tree they're going to see. And then, of course, there is a system used by actual democratic system, and recently WASA to IL in Iceland started using it, which is amendments. You know, people make a very precise request and say, I would like to add this paragraph over here, and people vote on that. So this is White House 2. White House 2 came from the United States, and the idea was that people were actually presenting a list of their priorities. If you were the president of the United States, what would be your priorities? And people could write priorities, add them, comment them, and what's important, as I said, get merged to priorities. This is how it came out at the end. It was actually quite nice. But the interesting thing is that at some point, no new priorities started to arrive. Every new priority started to be eaten because there were similar priorities around. This is like saying that if before you were having polls, and a poll would calculate how much people want a particular law, this is like having respect to that a topographic map. This is giving you the map of all the laws that people actually want, or at least the laws the people in that community want. So he started writing White House 2, and then he made it open source, but then in Iceland they forked this system and made open active democracy. And with this, they started to make a better Reykjavik. And this is actually being used. At some point, it was used by 20% of Reykjavik citizens. Said Reykjavik is not a very big city, by the way. And then they said, okay, let's use it for the whole Iceland. And then they said, let's use it for the whole world. That didn't have a lot of traction so far. I suppose you don't really know about it, but it's there. And then the code was really complex, and so they made a new version, which is social innovation. This was just a couple of months ago, the last one. Liquid feedback was based on proxy voting, and Smari was the first one who spoke about it in an official setting, at least for what I know. And the idea is you don't have to vote on everything, you can delegate, and the people you delegate can also delegate other people, and so on. And you can change your delegation in any moment. There are some assumptions that you are doing with this, and the first one is that finding a person that is able to vote on something as you would have voted if you were present at the election and you were educated, it's actually easier than actually studying the topic. That's one assumption you must make. A second is that checking how people are voting is actually going to be cost effective. And the third one is if someone delegates badly, he is damaging himself. Well, actually, if a lot of people delegate badly because there is a mafioso guy who is buying the delegation, the power from those people, the result is bad for the whole society. In fact, I challenge all those points over here, and I challenge it in my blog. So what I started suggesting is, well, if you do not just move the delegation directly so that people just get the power. So, for example, if someone receives 40 votes, you could just decide that instead of giving him a power of 40, you follow that blue line over here, which is a function that has an asymptote, so it never goes above that limit. The result of this is that no one will have too much power, but every new vote that you receive as a delegation will always improve you. And the equation is here for Antonella, who said that I should not dare to put any equation, any graph, unless I put also the equation over there. Now, and this is Iresis. Iresis uses a similar system to liquid feedback, except that there is no delegation, and it has a very interesting system where they deal with anonymity. And the idea is when you're discussing something with other people, you might be biased by what you think about them. So the systems give you a temporary name, a temporary nickname, just for the sake of that particular discussion. And people vote on the base of this, and it's going pretty well at the moment. So those are my concluding remarks. So eDemocracy is a work in progress. How to let people... One of the big problems is how you're going to let people who are not expert participate in a technical discussion, and delegation is a possible solution, but it has a lot of problems. There are other options, and you can actually ask me about it in the question time if you want. It's important to evaluate well proposal presented in different time and the proposal improved, and there are different platforms, but no platform is perfect. And this is essentially why some of those systems, of those political systems are going down right now. The systems are yet not, they are not good enough for now. Thank you. Thank you.